Great day, everyone. It's Carice Kelly, and I'm just going to get right to it with what I want to talk about. So, let's talk about it. I live in Florida. Recently, I saw in the news that there was a memorial in process, like a museum, a memorial interim, for the victims of the Pulse nightclub. Now, the Pulse nightclub shooting happened in 2016. I previously, before I looked into it, I thought it was over 50 people that had been killed. But when you go to the website for the One Pulse Interim Memorial, it shows the victim number to be 49 souls that were taken that night. So, Pulse nightclub, for those that might not know, it was a gay nightclub in Orlando, and they had a shooting that cost the lives of those 49 people. At the time of the shooting, the person, I guess, right before they died, they claimed allegiance to ISIS, but ultimately it was just a disgruntled person that had some problems with the lesbian LGBTQ community, and ultimately that's how they acted out with the shooting. So I'm always happy to hear when things are being acknowledged and getting the attention they need. In this case, a memorial being built or in progress for the victims. That's awesome. It made me think though. There's this thing that happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma back in 1921. This year is the 100-year anniversary. Well, just instead of just saying that there is no memorial, I looked into it. And so what I could find is there's some sort of Franklin Memorial for Tulsa, Oklahoma. Again, let me be very, very clear. The Pulse shooting happened in 2016. 5 years later, we have a memorial that it's up, and it's going to be something added to it, so it's in progress. 5 years later, the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre happened 100 years ago, and this park is named after someone by the name of Franklin. The park was only the result of a Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma commission. It started up in, I think, about maybe 2016 to address what happened during that horrible massacre. So just a quick little parallel. Pulse happened in 2016. We have a memorial that is going to be built upon and expanded. Um, Tulsa, Oklahoma, horrible race riot, 100 years ago. There's a memorial for a young man who spearheaded the lead to get something done, something on the books to acknowledge this. He's the one who steered the direction for them to open the commission looking into the event, and ultimately he's who the park is named after. There is no official site to memorialize the victims of the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre. I find it very disheartening that I only learned about it through things that might come up online that prompted me to do more research in it. It's not taught about, it's not taught in schools. It's not something I've ever, heard individuals having a conversation about. It's something just like a lot of things, the knowledge is out there, but you've got to go find it. They're not, from my experience, they're not showing this information to you. And I want to circle back a little bit. The point of this channel is, again, to inspire thought provoking conversations. I want topics to discuss that are always going to make you question the norm, because in society there are things that I think a lot of people take for granted. It's just the way things are, so you don't even question it. I found in life everything is everything. I'll never forget, I took a philosophy class in college. And the first day of class, the teacher gave us the assignment of writing an 8-page paper on why you think what you think. So, of course, before the class adjourned, there were tons of questions like, what do you mean? Why do I think what I think? The basic concept that the teacher was touching on is what inspires your perspective? What things are shaping the way you view things, whether it's conscious or unconscious? And you can't deny that there are things that you do that are done unconsciously. Like, I know a lot of people, you can be driving on the freeway and it's a route you drive every day, and at some point you get lost in thought and autopilot takes over. And when you register back into reality, you realize, oh my God, I've gone past my exit. Oh my God, I've gone 3 miles and I have no idea how I was operating this vehicle. I was completely lost in thought. There are things in society that are geared towards programming people. You can say it's, to help. You can say it's to hurt. But the fact of the matter is that there are things that are programming you. I mentioned previously on another video how I thought it was awesome that the Asians got that, anti-hate bill for them and everything. I think it's awesome. But I question why stuff is being done to, you know, defend them so quickly. It's sometimes difficult to choose my words because I don't want it to come off like I don't care. I don't want to come off callous like, well, it's all for, my people and forget everybody else. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm simply drawing parallels. And the fact of the matter is there are a lot of people that are killed, a lot of African Americans killed at the hand of police. There's no hate crime. And, if the anti hate, if the if the Asian bill, that's geared towards punishing people who have a hate crime towards Asian, if that was a result of what happened with, the pandemic and everybody blaming Asians for whatever rhetoric was being put out there, that happened quick. It's real quick. It was about a year ago that the pandemic took off, a little over a year ago, and they did something real quick to get that together. So I'm bringing that up again to say I believe that there are things in society where we're programmed to not really care too much about ourselves first. I'm going to touch on something else really quickly. So I also just heard something that there's going to be the Biden administration is taking up a bill. They're taking steps towards domestic terrorism. Domestic terrorism being, terrorists that are homegrown. I'll just say it. It's a lot of white people that are the domestic terrorists. The white power, white supremacy, all those groups. Those are the domestic terrorists. The people who stormed the Capitol. That's definitely a form of domestic terrorism. Now, granted, that's awesome. It's a great step in the right direction. But there are some similarities towards the international terrorist bill, and then there's a distinct difference. The main difference is even though there's now steps being taken to, act against the domestic terrorism, there is still no federal crime against it. And often when people are being tried for acts of terrorism, domestic terrorism, ultimately what gets them any type of federal charges are the guns. Like if they're caught with guns, that's instantly gonna help them rack up some years to say, okay, well, because you have this gun, these are the charges we're gonna assess with that. But there's still no real federal law against domestic terrorists. And I don't think it's a coincidence that most domestic terrorists are white. So that's one of the things that I want. I'm really interested what other people are thinking in regard to this, because for a long time I would think that whatever thoughts I had, they were, everyone's thoughts, that this is how everyone felt, that the perspective I had, the things that I viewed one way, it was a universal view, and that's not the case. So I'm really curious to know what you think about that. I think it's good that there's now a bill to act against, the domestic terrorists. There's steps being taken in that direction. I think that's awesome. But again, I'm curious to know what you think about that. The last thing I'm going to touch on is critical race theory. Now, I don't think this is something that's discussed quite as much. I live in the South, so I've seen it on the news, and it's something that's coming up more and more in the school system down here. And critical race theory or critical race relations is pretty much, it would be, if passed, because from everything I've seen on the news, they're fighting it tooth and nail. But it would be something that added to the school curriculum, specific courses and studies that address in detail some of the events of the past that led to the current environment that we have, where African Americans are viewed a certain way, and other minorities, and how, whites, Caucasians are viewed another way, and the disdain that, some white Caucasians might have for, the other minorities. Things didn't get the way that they are just poof, one day we woke up that way. You've got to say that the fact that some of these things aren't being taught and aren't being addressed, maybe at a academic level early on, who's to say that that's the reason that that's not the reason that this stuff is running rampant? Now, I know the previous administration and a lot of the rhetoric that came from that might have fueled some of these fires that were already burning. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't learn from your past, then you're doomed to repeat it. And if there are things in the past that are constantly being swept on the under the rug, then people that are repeating those things, not only are they doomed to repeat it, but they have no idea that they're just repeating things that have been, happening for years and years. So I just, I just really, I just really struggle with some of these things because I know that, you have to be the change that you want to see. I know that you can't, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? You can't tackle everything at once. But there just seem to be so many things at play, and it all seems to stem from racism. And I love all of my fellow human beings. I definitely love all humans. You can't say you're colorblind, because the fact of the matter is there are differences and things that make one person unique from another, and I'm not gonna ignore that. But still, I do judge people by their character. We all have unconscious bias, so there are, opinions, stereotypes that we have in our mind. But the difference between having those things in your mind and racism is when you act on those things, or when you let those thoughts, you know in my opinion, drive actions that are less than desirable. So I notice these things, and that's my intention, to make sure that the things that I notice that make me think and question, what is, those are the things I'm going to be bringing to the topics, or bringing as topics to discuss. So finally, I want to add this as closing, just connecting the statement I made previously about everything being everything. I'm seeing a lot of things that are coming out to the general public that before were kind of secretive. I plan on doing a little bit more content around these things, but just to touch on it, UFOs. They don't even call UFOs anymore. They're called unidentified aerial phenomena, like UAP. And then when you hear that term, they say previously known as UFOs. Well, now it's coming out that, they are a thing. The Pentagon released some papers. The CIA declassified some information. 60 Minutes, not too long ago, did a story on it. And these are things that for years you were told, I would say, the general public was told by, the powers that be, that that wasn't real. It's fake. Don't believe it. It's, conspiracy theory. And now you're finding that those things are true. Um, Someone recently posted something saying, it's okay for things to be wrong, and when you see that science has amended a previous opinion, it's pretty much them, changing the opinion based on new information. That's all well and good. I'm not saying that science doesn't have the right to change, and that, when you acquire new information, you shouldn't change your perspective. But I just have a beef with things that are presented as if they're factual. So let's stay on topic. So UFOs, hey, that's fake. Now you know they're real. Um, I'm into things that are somewhat, I hate to deem it forbidden archaeology, but I'm into ancient Egypt, all type of other megalithic sites, Gobekli Tempe, uh, Angkor Wat, all type of places that, you know, if you look into it, I think the narrative is generally that life, civilization like we know it, started about 10,000 years ago. But then when you find these other places, use the same carbon dating techniques that archaeologists use, and you find that the narrative's going back 13,000 and even older than that, where they're advanced civilizations. The things that these civilizations achieved, the way that their structures were made, they can't be done today. And all of that initially has been provided as no, that's not what it was. Like even down to the pyramid, they tell you that the pyramid was a tomb, and it wasn't a tomb. It's never been a body found in a tomb. The tombs where they did find bodies, they clearly saw hieroglyphics on the wall, and there is no hieroglyphics inside the Great Pyramid at Giza. But that's what you're told. You're told that's the biggest narrative. It's a tomb. That's what it was used for. The whole point I'm getting to is that more and more and more you're finding that what you're told is not the truth, and that there are things that are being coded over to specifically deceive you, and it's happening on all levels. I can give examples on every level, but ultimately that's the way that the powers that be work with the general population. So I'm a skeptic. I'm gonna analyze anything. I'm gonna be critical. That's just what I'm gonna do. And I encourage everybody to do that. Like if you're not thinking, what are you doing? You shouldn't be on autopilot. There should be things that when they come through, your brain says, "Hold on, let me process that a little bit more." And so that's what I'm doing with everything that comes through my mind. I process it more and more. So if I can go through 10 different categories and find different scenarios where they lied to you, like with the Tulsa, Oklahoma thing, you couldn't speak on it. The families that lived in that community afterwards, they couldn't talk about what happened. Like the kids that grew up under the people that lived through that, they didn't tell them those stories. It's people who lived in Tulsa that had never heard of it. So if on all these different levels you're finding that they're lying to you, it makes you very skeptical just in general. And that's what I am. I'm a skeptic. I consider it healthy skepticism. But there's nothing in me that's ever gonna get a piece of information. I just take it at face value, ever. I'm forever gonna question things, and as it stands now, I'm forever gonna bring those things to you guys to get your thoughts on that. So I just wanted to come come across, share some of my thoughts with you, and I'm going to offer up the question like, what do you think about that? What do you think about them, stepping in a direction to address domestic terrorism? What do you think about critical race theory? Which again, critical race theory is just a discussion of race, the history of Caucasians versus the minorities, and interactions of the past that may have resulted in what we have today. What do you think about the Pulse nightclub memorial and Terror memorial that they have, which is just 5 years after that event versus 100 years after the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre, and still no direct memorial? Definitely have acknowledged the young man that spearheaded getting that commission open to investigate it, but nothing to officially memorialize the event. Just want to know your thoughts on that. I'm forever going to question these things, and I'm going to forever speak out. So let me know what your thoughts are. It's always a pleasure sharing these things. And as always, I want you guys to have a great day. Happy, happy, happy Tuesday. Goodbye, loves.